Alright. Forward, sword in hand. September, year 1207 of the Septian calendar. I cannot accept. I was not one to mince words. The hulking bear of a veteran bracer, Zin Vathik, could not hide his disappointment, puffing out his bottom lip with a sigh as he stood before me. Not again. You gotta resign yourself to the inevitable one of these days. I had been indebted to this man, who was as capable as he was kind, since my first days in the guild. Truly, I didn't wish to be the source of vexation for him, but the wish alone was not enough. I have neither the experience nor skill to be worthy of A rank, so I cannot accept your recommendation. Bracers are assigned ranks based on their strength and achievements, with A rank being the highest, on paper at least. Its members are the very face of its beloved organization, and as such, ranks are a metaphorical badge of honor to be worn with pride. So how had I received multiple recommendations for the most prestigious rank in 6 months? I spared no effort in working to hone my craft in the years I joined after school, and certainly, I wouldn't classify myself as a doe-eyed newcomer. But to have my name among the greats of the guild? Absolutely not. But after turning down my first recommendation, a second one had come from the guild's headquarters in Le Mans. If you ask me, you got both in spades. There's something else making you lead toward a no? Zin's awkward smile told me he had been pressured by headquarters to persuade me. I folded my arms. Setting aside whether you're overestimating me or not, which I believe you are, there is. I would very much like not to stand out any more than I already do. I've been getting offers to be a model, to star in films. It's been frankly exhausting forcing them to give up. Now what do you think would happen if I were to accept the promotion? I'll be neck deep in the same mess all over again. Okay, that makes sense, but sorry. You're a 1-2 punch in the beauty and bronze department, trying to lay low as a lost cause. With the kind of fans you're getting, maybe you should consider the silver screen after all. Who knows? You might walk away with an award from the film festival. Zin's laugh was hearty in contrast to my unamused frown. Much as I respected him, he could do with showing a little more decorum. That's not funny. I understand being in the public eye to some extent is inevitable, and I've accepted it, but I'm a bracer, not an entertainer. I wasn't trying to be funny though. You gotta find a way to let off some steam, or you're gonna break when we need you to put together the most. Happens to the workaholics like you more often than you think. I didn't think I was pushing myself as much as he implied, but I also couldn't deny there was a nugget of truth to what he said. We were getting off topic. Just why is headquarters so desperate for me to become an A-rank bracer? I can't see the logic behind it. Well, you see, starting with what you know, the reparations from Erebonia have beefed up our economy this year, so all kinds of new investments are pouring in from across the continent. Now, I'm no economist, but people go where the money's at, and where people go, conflict follows. That's just how it is. I saw where he was going from there, electing to expand upon the rest myself. So now we have disputes between megacorporations and a stark increase in Jaeger activity. These are in addition to the known growth of private military companies and increased tensions between mafias. You got it. You think it's bad now. It's only going to get worse from here. That's why Le Mans wants to up security here while promoting our rising star. You. They see it as good PR for a guild and a deterrent to any potential threats that are thinking about stepping out of line. Perhaps I was more vaguely aware of their goal in using me than I wanted to admit. This didn't make hearing the answer any more satisfying. If they have you asking me to play my part, then surely they have asked you to play your part already. You've been recommended for S-rank, haven't you? If you know of a better deterrent than having an S-rank in Calvard, then I'd like to hear it. Zin scritched the back of his head awkwardly upon my statement. I just don't think I'm up there with someone like Cassius Bright. S isn't even an official rank, and even if it was, just look at me. Think a guy like me is a picture-perfect advertisement for the guild? I think you have the skills, achievements, and build to be one, yes. A curt, quick response. Alright, point made. I can't force you to take the recommendation, and I'm not about to be a hypocrite. Just, let me know if you change your mind, okay? With that, the conversation came to an end, and the guild's bracers gathered to begin our routine meeting of delegating upon open requests. This is how I preferred things. It was better to stay like this. There was a point when I wanted to be something more. I can no longer remember when that was. Sometime during my childhood it had happened, I'm sure. I just recall realizing how small the world truly was, so I prayed and longed to become someone I was not. It was around high school when I thought I became that someone. Those years were unforgettable. I'll never forget the unexpected reunion that was had there, nor the priceless treasure I had gained. I truly thought I'd gotten closer to who I wanted to be. But in the end, it was just wishful thinking. My hand once held was now empty, and I was still a nobody. But I refused to stand still. I grew unrelenting in following the new path I chose for myself, ignoring my family's objections. My motivations had changed, however. I no longer possessed the girlhood desire of becoming something more, of becoming someone. I just needed to keep moving, however aimless that movement was. Well, aren't we looking gorgeous today? With a whimsical wink, a familiar bartender welcomed me to his establishment. He was a tall, affable man who lived by his own rules and never hesitated to lend a helping hand to others. He reminded me much of the Crossbell City's branch receptionist from the few times I visited for work. The place was nearly empty today. I sat down at the counter, seat farthest from the door as he approached. The usual, sweetheart? I stopped by here after a hard day's work on occasion, and whenever I did, I always ordered coffee and a light snack. This was not a coffee and snacks kind of day. I wanted something with alcohol. Even beer will do. Not at all fazed by the vagueness of my order, he walked away and started preparing my drink. It wasn't long before he returned and placed an elegant glass in front of me. I think this is a little more you than the beer. It was a beautiful cocktail composed of two colors, a clear blue like that of a priceless sapphire, and a calming jade. No doubt he could tell how disquieted my heart was and was trying to soothe it in his own way. I thanked him inwardly before daring to broach my other reason for coming. Have you learned anything more about what I asked? Apart from being a skilled bartender, he was also a well-known informant. He was extremely well connected to the guild, the press, and even the criminal underworld, but he was very careful never to overstep his bounds with that last one. Indeed, I found him to be a valuable source when needed. I wish I could say yes. Not even Dingo has any promising leads. Still, I think you've got your eyes on the right district. It's only a matter of time before they get smoked out. I see. Since the guild's investigation turned up nothing, I was hoping he would better point me in the right direction, but it seemed this was going to be a lot harder than I hoped. Things will work out. Just pace yourself and keep at it a little bit at a time. That also applies to the cocktail. It's a strong one, so don't drink it all at once. I tilted the glass delicately between my fingers. As he stepped away, my mind continuing to wade through the case I was following. There had been a stark increase in illegal drugs in the market. Not just any drugs, but ones of highly addictive, dangerous variety. Heiue, who effectively ruled over the criminal underworld in Calvard, ordinarily limited their proliferation in the market as part of their rules. Limiting the number of drugs was, of course, far from the ideal elimination of them, but none could deny that the syndicate's actions had brought some semblance of order to where chaos often reigned supreme. Yet the past few years have been worrying the number of criminal groups rebelling against these carefully curated rules. One of these groups was surely behind the change in the market, and all of this held a presumed connection to the two missing people. The guild and the police had been tasked with searching for two children below the age of 10, a boy and his younger sister. They simply left the house one day and had not been seen since. Evidence suggested they came from a perfectly ordinary family on good terms with one another, so the likelihood of them running away was slim. We mulled over the suspicion that they had been abducted for ransom early on, but not a single demand was made following their disappearance, so it was quickly ruled out. Despite a healthy amount of manpower that was coming from both sides, neither the guild nor the police had yet to find them. That said, the search so far had not proved entirely fruitless. Their last known location was fortunately established, and it was, unfortunately, a popular site for illicit drug trade. Wow. The kids? The working theory from there became that the siblings witnessed a transaction and were held captive by the criminal parties involved as a result. See, that makes more sense. If that held true, then the longer it took our parties to find them, the greater the danger their lives were in. The abductors wouldn't do anything right away, Murder was sure to leave trace evidence behind, but it was only a matter of time before they resorted to that or trafficking abroad to be rid of them. With each passing second, the odds of the children being returned unharmed were dropping to zero. At the same time, all of this was pure speculation on our part based on a single established location. For all we knew, this had nothing to do with the criminal underworld at all. The potential dangers thrown around made inaction an agonizing task. But if there was no evidence to go on, action was impossible. We could forcibly arrest any suspicious people on sight and make them talk should we wish it. But that would be a direct violation of the Guild's code and its founding principles. The Bracer Guild always sought to be an ally of the people first and foremost, so resorting to criminal acts to obtain evidence was out of the question. If only the strict adherence to our code didn't stop us from being able to resolve so many crimes, thereby putting the people we swore to protect in danger. It was the ultimate impasse. As I found myself pondering on this impossible dilemma the Bracers had placed themselves in, a familiar face came to mind. He was a childhood friend with blue-tinged unkempt hair. Though he had lost contact with one another some years before, he one day returned to the city as suddenly as he had left it. Soon after starting up a peculiar profession that skirted the line of legality to a dangerous degree. The kind of profession that could easily involve himself in the affairs of many unscrupulous individual, or so I believe. Just what did that idiot think he was doing? He walked out of my life without warning and walked back in much the same. I'd spent so much time searching for him. I knew our reunion would be an awkward one based on how we parted, but for him to return after all that waiting, all that searching, and dive into some questionable enterprise so different from my own was almost too much to bear. It gave rise to many concerns as a bracer, and many more concerns as a friend. Okay, how much you want to bet that blue-haired character that she's talking about is the main character of Daybreak? And the one that bothered me most was, why hadn't he come to see me? Did he have any idea how worried I was about him? How worried I am about him? Irritation building, I took a large gulp of my cocktail, but the alcohol only fanned the flames of anger burning in my heart. They burned brighter and brighter still, becoming a dazzling white that projected countless transient images of the past. Then, just as quickly as it had flared, my anger faded in an instant, replacing itself with a very different emotion altogether. Why did you leave me? The words slipped from my mouth without me realizing it, making me feel downright pitiful once they were said. If someone were to see me in this state. You still haven't moved on, I see. A familiar but unexpected voice called out to me, causing me to jump slightly from surprise. I quickly regained my composure. I just had a few words I'd like to say. My response feigned the calmness as best I could. I couldn't help but think I had more than a few choice words, really, but following up with that would aid my annoyance in a way that I would rather not further. Oh, I imagine you had more than a few. Right, of course he would see right through me. The bespectacled man that sat down next to me, as though our running into each other was no coincidence, he was another childhood friend of both myself and the one I was lamenting over, and someone who followed a remarkably different career path from either one of us. If it's still bothering you that much, why not just go and see him? You already have his address by now, surely. How could I with how much time that's passed? As I mumbled my response meekly, I thought I could hear the man next to me chuckle. Well then, I suppose there's no need to rush things. With your lines of work, I'm sure your paths will cross naturally enough in due time. I didn't expect that kind of response. You make it sound so romantic. Lest you have forgotten, I don't struggle with expressing what's in my heart the way he does. Now, since we're here, how about a toast? I'll, make your next one non-alcoholic. And lest you have forgotten, I can handle my liquor just fine, thank you very much. We spent the rest of our time reminiscing about the past. It had been too long since we were able to just sit and talk like this. It wasn't that he and I had become estranged, but both of our jobs made it a trying task to meet even at the best of times. By the way, I've heard word you turned down becoming an A-rank bracer again. Of course that wouldn't escape the CID's ears. The information itself wasn't confidential, but that he already knew something, however unofficial it was entirely typical of him. The Bracer Guild focused on protecting civilians, where the CID focused solely on the needs of the president in the office. The groups were neither enemies nor allies. They simply had very different goals where work was concerned. I know it isn't my place to tell you to accept the offer, however. He paused before resuming, his tone becoming markedly more serious. The times we lived in demand a new hero. That much is clear. I had no idea what a realist like him was trying to say by implying I was a hero. But before I could inquire further, he changed to the subject that was likely what brought him to find me in the first place. Now, if you don't mind, I have something that will be of interest to you regarding those missing children. My eyes widened from the unexpected change. He continued. We have identified the group that made that district their turf, as well as have compelling evidence of a crime taking place. You may proceed as you like in cooperation with the police. I couldn't believe it. On a fine silver platter, he had given me just cause to act, and since the information came from the CID, there was no reason to doubt its veracity. I felt it. I was on the verge of rekindling my girlhood desires. All I had done till now was follow life where it was taking me. And yet here I found myself before a new path that could lead to that someone I once wanted to see, or wanted to be. This deviation terrified me. What if it led to me losing someone again? What if it ended in more pain? My fear begged me to stay idle. I was a fragile human being at my core. I knew it well. It made me wish I was anything but. It inspired me to take up the sword and rebel against any whispers of weakness, and I played the part admirably on the surface. But if I were forced to face cruel reality in the future, I wondered, would my heart be able to take it? As I sidestepped to the left, I shifted my center of gravity and unleashed a flurry of slashes against my first foe, using that momentum to thrust both myself and my blade toward my second. 2 low-ranking mobsters fell to the ground. They were members of the Mafia I had been chasing, and right now, I was in the thick of their den of operations. My friend gave the guild and police the excuse we needed to take more direct stance against your targets. His information was vague, however, so we still had to discern their precise location on our own. I, Zin, and several other bracers agreed it would be best to split our forces and attack several locations in unison for this part of our mission. Based on what just transpired, it appeared my location was the lucky winner. There's the intruder. Hey, I've seen her before. She's from the paper. 2 more reinforcements arrived, but I was hardly going to give them time to act. I raced forward, swinging my sword twice as I passed them, and they fell before they could even raise their weapons. I advanced. Mobsters appeared in droves. Presumably, word of my arrival had already spread. There she is! She's that bracer word's been going on about. Well, damn it! What if the immovable is here too? Don't be chicken shit. It's one woman. We can take care of her. They then charged me in a mass, at least 10 of them, with more reinforcements on their way from farther inside the building. Forcing my way through with how many they had in their number was risky. I knew the sensible thing to do would be to wait for the other bracers to show, but I also had to consider, what if my waiting afforded the Mafia the time wield the children as hostages? Weighing the 2 options, I concluded that whatever reduced the chances of that happening was worth the cost. I needed to push on and settle this now. Besides, I believed I had nothing to fear from this pitiful group as they were. Were they seasoned combat veterans, they could have used their numerical advantage to implement complex formations and corner me. But they did no such thing. The amateurs. And they dared to believe they had the candle to Heiwei's martial arts? In the face of one of my experience, their bloated size was more of a hindrance than a help. They wouldn't be able to utilize even half of their potential against me. I first had to position myself and them appropriately. If I could ensure that gun-toting wielders among them were in each other's line of fire while rounding up the close-range fires to a single spot, they would soon have bigger worries. Friendly fire. Their vulnerabilities would then spell my victory as I cut them down. 1 down, 2 down. The precious seconds after defeating a foe were the most advantageous. Just as a man had fallen, I was on to another before they had time to adjust to my incoming blade. There was no pattern to who was next by design. I chose my targets with stunning erraticism, throwing them into a complete disarray as more collapsed to the ground. 3 down, 4. I would go around them in a wide circle. I would move between them. While remaining even aware of any surprise assaults at my back, I waited through them until I encountered the ones farthest back. Those ones never even considered I would be able to reach them. They were spread so carelessly. The men took up their guns with newly alert panic strewn across their faces, but their fate was already sealed. They were powerless as I closed the gap between us. 5, 6, 7. With over half their number down, the remaining mobsters were quickly losing their will to counter. Some attacked out of adrenaline-induced desperation. calculating the next move so poorly that they fell into my long, set trap and accidentally attacked themselves. At this point, the battle was as good as final. All I had to do was continue taking them down until I was the last one standing. There were smaller groups I encountered on my way through the building, but I was able to disable them with little effort. The path they opened up for me eventually led me to their leader. He was a middle-aged fellow, pacing restlessly around an unpleasantly gaudy room until I entered. He twitched in fear upon the very sight of me. Why are you here? Where are my men? Kissing the floors. I answered so calmly and concisely that he balked in disbelief. That's impossible! I sweat my balls off to build this group from the ground up, and you're saying a girl like you tore it all down just like that? I ignored his crude language and drew closer. As I thrust my sword till it sat just between his eyes, he let out a squeal. Well, I'm no ordinary girl. I'm a bracer. And don't worry, I didn't kill them. They have only been knocked out or restrained. You'll be seeing them again soon, in prison. I shot a darkened glare in his direction as the tip of my sword wandered downward to his neck. Now, I have some questions for you, and you will answer them. The man nodded emphatically, his whole body trembling from fear. 2 children, a boy and a girl, under 10 years old, disappeared last month. Your people abducted them, didn't they? He nodded. I knew it. Then where are they? What did you do to them? They're in the room farther inside. They're alive. At last, I could breathe a sigh of relief. My most fundamental objective when coming here could be fulfilled. Next, I need to ask him more about his group. I thought you all seemed far too weak to be charged of this district of the city. But after coming across your account book, everything fell into place. You're working on behalf of someone else, aren't you? He was so unsure of how to respond that he fell completely silent, but that alone gave me my answer. Who is it then? Tell me! Is it A? I can't. He flinched in fear as I pressed him, resisting as though he genuinely couldn't say. Then just as he opened his trembling lips to speak, I heard a strange thudding sound from outside the room. I stepped away from the man, my sword still firmly in hand. Crunching, squelching, splattering. More sounds. These more audible than the first, I didn't know what to make of them, but they made me feel an instinctive revulsion as they dragged on. They may have come accompanied by faint groans, but if they did, they faded just as soon as the sounds themselves. I remained on guard as I stepped out into the hallway, ready to be attacked from any angle at any moment. And the sight that greeted me defied all imagination. The mobsters I fought through mere minutes before now were nothing more than a distorted, mutilated piles of flesh and bone. Not just 1 or 2. Every single one of them, without exception, had been reduced to bloody mounds. Some were without heads. Others had their organs ripped from their abdomens. Then there were those with their skulls caved in and leaking pulverized brain matter, or the ones with their hearts pulled and squeezed. Each corpse was different. Each corpse was unbearable to look at. The plain hallway I traversed with all due speed was now covered in a sticky, slimy red. Who could have done something like this? The sight was so awful that my free hand, now clenched, shook from disgust. When was it ever necessary to go this far? What could anyone have to gain from this? Wait, no! I realized I had just made a very careless mistake. I turned and hurried back into the room I was just in. I was too late. The Mafia's leader was floating in the air at the center of the room as though some unknown force was holding him by his chest. A monstrous sword pierced through his chest. A single streak of blood dripped from his unspeaking mouth. There was no room to believe he was anything but dead. Like all others in the hallway, he didn't even have time to scream before his life was taken. Who are you? I barked at the center of the room, trying to drown out my instinctive fear with anger. At a glance, only the corpse and I were present, but if I strained my eyes, I could also see the faint contours of another destroying space around them. It must have been some form of active camouflage. I would have thought it a basic courtesy to give your name before asking another's charming ace of the Bracer Guild. It was a man's voice that projected true arrogance, as though he was above all others as a matter of course. I instinctively readied myself for a battle in response, but my actions seemed not to faze him in the slightest. No need to be spoiling for a fight. I'm simply here to take out the trash after they were careless enough to leave a trail for the CID to follow. Was I really talking to a fellow human being? How could he speak of such gruesome murders in those terms? Are you a business partner of theirs? No. You must be from the group above them. Very good. He then swung his blade to the side. to slide and toss the corpse off to the side with all the respect of a used cigarette. How could you treat people you work with like this? People. Have you your ears? I said nothing about taking out a person, only trash. The same applies to the garbage piling up in the hallway. They have always been so, even before they stopped breathing. It was clear that communicating with someone of his nature was impossible. I dismissed calm reason for an intense, all-consuming anger so great that my entire body couldn't stop trembling. You monster! Before I knew it, I had sprung into action, pouting every drop of my strength into my blade to launch a swift, unavoidable strike. But he replied with one vertical swing of his own. This one exchange was enough to tell me that his strength was a league above mine. He parried my blow at the most perfect instant, canceling out the force of my attack with so little effort that it barely scratched the surface of what he was capable of. The active camouflage did nothing to hide the monstrous nature of his cruciform sword either. Its design combined silver and black in an unholy fusion of darkness and light, as if chaos itself dwelled within its very blade. It was no common weapon. Even if I continued to give it my all, my odds of winning against him were extremely slim. But at the same time, my instincts were screaming at me that I could not allow him to leave. I charged again. If attacking from the front wasn't going to work, then I would have to go for this side. He blocked that attack with just as little effort. But I wasn't done yet. I refused to stop moving, slashing a third time with even more speed than the first two. Well, he seems to be matching you really well. I showered him in a flurry of them, each one faster than the last. When I finally reached my physical limit, I darted in a new direction, attacking him from behind. I put my very soul into one overwhelming attack aimed directly at his rear, which I could only just make out through the camouflage's distortion. I got him. However, the second I became sure that victory was within my grasp, his cruciform blade carved a great arc through the air in a ferocious spinning slash. I was able to instantly defend myself against the blow, but the force of it sent me flying backward. I was fortunate enough to not have to sustain direct hit, but my body shook from now being able to fully cancel out its massive weight. Still, I forced myself back to my feet and glared at his form. The difference between us was night and day. It felt as though he could manipulate the very flow of battle, much like a master of martial arts who understood the true nature of all things. He paid no mind to my pitiful attempt at bravado, and gave a short laugh before speaking. Impressive. You put up more of a fight than the rumors had led me to believe. What's your goal? What are you trying to do with all your strength? I expected him to reject or ignore me, so I was taken aback when he paused for a sincere moment of thought before answering. An interesting question. I suppose to instill fear? Fear. I almost doubted my ears. Fear is at the heart of all we know. Domination and servitude, order, harmony, and production. All of it exists because of fear. That is why I seek to instill fear in its purest form, much like the retributive tower that appeared in Crossbell half a year ago. Such a pity that it fell. There was such pleasure in his words that it made it easy to imagine the expression of his veiled face. As insane as what he was saying sounded to me, I knew he meant every word of it. You really are a monster. Continue your fruitless attempts to stop me, and you'll understand what I mean in due time. He lowered his blade. As a parting gift for assisting me in my house cleaning efforts, I will let you and those children go. Keep that far too pristine blade sharp for our next meeting, Bracer. With that, he turned to leave. Wait! Just as I extended my hand, the ground below him emitted a bright glow, and by the time that glow had faded, he was gone. He had likely used the same teleportation spell that certain other criminal organizations were known to rely on. His departure also released all the strength I had left in me, not from relief, but from the exact opposite. I was so overwhelmed with frustration that I let him leave, so afraid of what he might go on to do because I couldn't stop him that I lost the strength to even stand. Of course, this is just who I've always been. I haven't changed one bit since the day you left me. I'm still the same powerless girl I was back then. My work here wasn't finished yet. I walked to the next room. I opened the door and was greeted by what appeared to be an old storage space. There, across the hall, I found who I was searching for. The brother and sister pair who crouched against the wall, the boy trembling on the floor as his sister stood close by. "It's okay. I'm here to help you." I kept my tone as gentle and reassuring as I was able. The girl smiled while her older brother continued to hide his face. I slowly walked toward them, careful not to make any sudden movements. But as I did, the boy shook his head vigorously. His whole body trembled more the closer I got, as though he were telling me to stay away. The answer from that man flashed in my mind. Fear is at the heart of all we know. These poor children were very much in fear's clutches. No matter how gradual, I was enclosing the distance between myself and the boy, trying my best not to provoke him. His body language showed he continued to reject me. We were now within arm's length of one another. His shaking grew more violent, and though he opened his mouth to speak, his voice refused to come out. "It's all right." I smiled, the most comforting smile. After that, I reached out behind me and grasped the blade of the knife that was being thrust toward me. I turned swiftly, my fingers never letting go, and found one gripping the hilt to be none other than the sister. She had tiptoed around my back while I was kneeling to meet her brother and tried to stab me from behind. She was a bit startled by halting her attack, but otherwise she stared blankly forward, emotion on her face, nowhere to be seen. I suppose he was right about fear. It controls everything we do. You must have been through something terrifying if it made you resort to this. No doubt they were now conditioned by fear to attack anyone who came to their rescue. I paid no mind to the blood from my bare hand slowly dripping to the floor. The cut from the knife was nothing compared to everything else in the moment. My first priority instead was to reassure the girl that I meant no harm. But we humans are capable of more than giving in to that fear. We can fight it. With courage, we can fight it. Your brother was doing that just now. He may have been gripped by fear, but he still fought his hardest through his actions to alert me of the danger his sister posed. Even if it took all he had, he wanted to keep me safe and to keep her from committing an irreversible, regrettable act. It was thanks to him that I noticed what she was trying to do. "You don't have to be afraid anymore. I'm a bracer. I'll keep you safe." I took the girl in my arms. "You're a bracer?" Even her voice was devoid of emotion. "That's right. I'm here to help you." "Oh, I think I've seen you in a magazine before. Something Blade, I think." "That's right. The nickname is a little embarrassing, but I'd be happy if you remembered it. That way, as long as you hear it, you'll know I'm here to keep you out of harm's way." I tightened my grip around her as if to stop anything more from hurting her and surround her heart with my warmth. "It really will be okay, I promise." I noticed her eyes twitch just slightly, and before long, her eyes filled with tears. Soon she began to sniffle. At first a small one here and there, till they gradually grew more pronounced, eventually turning into uncontrollable sobs. She had finally been liberated from her fear. That was sad, man. That sucks. I'm glad that they finally helped and saved them. As for me, I had stayed my course. I was too afraid to deviate from my current path. Still, I had chosen this path with pride in my heart. I didn't think it right to turn my back on it now, but I wasn't going to let it be an aimless journey from now on either. And so, it was another day in the Edith branch of Calvert's Guild. It sounds like that Mafia was trying to copy what the other organization of assassins managed to pull off. I was discussing the recent case with Zin. The siblings had indeed been abducted because they witnessed an illegal transaction. The Mafia involved then thought to mimic a group of assassins known for raising children with intent of turning them into professional killers. Their attempts, thankfully, proved as unsuccessful as their attempts to remain covert in selling drugs. The CID found them, and whoever they were working for purged them. Hell of a way to go. If I hadn't been so incompetent, maybe they wouldn't have been purged on at all. Don't beat yourself up about it. The Guild's priority is to keep civilians safe, not criminals. I don't want to say they deserve it for getting involved in organized crime, but it is what it is. Try putting that frustration you're feeling into more personal growth instead of letting it eat you alive. I was told that while siblings were going to need psychological counseling for some time, they were fully expected to recover and go back to their everyday lives. Meeting with them had triggered something inside of me. I came to realize that something needed to change. I had to take some kind of step forward. Even if it ended me falling to the floor in some dramatic fashion, I just needed to pick myself back up again. With that in mind, I accepted multiple recommendations. The times we lived in demand a new hero. Doing so made me think of what my childhood friend said to me. I didn't believe I had what it took to be a hero. But if I could even, just a brief one able to give the people hope and banish the darkness ahead, and that was reason enough to keep going. Maybe that could make me somebody enough to fight alongside the real hero once they came to light. Shall we get down to business? Zin turned to face me, his classic broad grin even broader than usual. It'll be a while longer before the official paper arrives from headquarters, but I'm sure they won't mind me speeding up this part of the process with how much they wanted this. The Republic now has a bracer who reached A rank at the same age as the Empire's Purple Lightning. Congrats on your promotion, Elena Claire, Beauty's Blade. Wow. And that's it. Suspension of causality, recording engine activity confirmed. Force connection to Astrolink severed. The whirlpool of causality engulfing Erebos and the fated land has at last been unraveled. Though the bell ringing the end of days has yet to be silenced, you, children of Zemeria, have earned your moment of peace until the time comes to face the final hour. Until you, with hope and fear in your hearts, must walk new trails. Is that a hint? Are you trying to tell me to play the new trails already? Is that it? Well, don't you worry. We're getting there. Alright, well, that's that, guys. Thank you all for watching. We completed the main story of Trails into Reverie. And a couple of side stuff here and there. But nonetheless, like I said before, I'm not much of a completionist in terms of trying to platinum games. But I do tend to do like main story arcs, and obviously as well as trying to get like side things like ultimate weapons, armor, and so forth. Those types of things at least I'll go through all the trouble for. But all the other extra added things like trying to get every single perfected thing, I can't do that. That's not in me, man. But yeah, I want to thank you all for watching, and we're gonna go on with the new trails in the next one. So thank you all for watching. I hope to see Lloyd again. I hope to see Reen and everyone else in the future, if anything, because they probably will make cameos in the next one. But yeah, so until then, guys, I'll see you all in the next one. Take care. Then. Hey, I was talking. What are you doing? Rude. Alright, one more time, guys. Alright, take care, everyone.